Picture the hardest workout you've ever done. The one where your legs shook on the stairs afterward. The one where you couldn't lift your arms to wash your own hair. Now imagine doing that workout every single day, starting before sunrise, with no rest days, no protein shake, no hot shower, and no finish line. Imagine that if you skip it, your children don't eat. Imagine doing it pregnant. Imagine doing it with a fever. Imagine doing it at 50, with hands so cracked from cold water and lye that they bleed into the bread dough, and you need the blood in anyway because flour is too precious to waste. That's the morning of a farm wife in 14th century England. Not her whole day, just her morning. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists admiring the thatched cottages and the pretty green fields. We're going into the smoke and the mud and the 4 in the morning darkness. One day, one woman, everything she would have lifted, carried, hauled, kneaded, milked, chopped, boiled and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I have no clue if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just weirdos who like hearing about medieval women hauling 40-pound water buckets before dawn. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. Your eyes open to darkness. Not the darkness of a bedroom with blackout curtains. Real darkness. The kind that has weight. And for half a second, you don't know where you are. Then the cold finds you, and you remember. Your name is Matilda. Everyone calls you Mould. You're 31 years old, and you've been awake for approximately 2 seconds, and your day has already started going wrong, because the thing that woke you was not the cockerel. It was silence. The fire has gone out. You know this without opening your eyes fully, without moving, the way you know your own heartbeat. A living fire in the hearth makes a sound. Not much of one. A soft settling, a whisper of ash shifting, the faint tick of an ember cooling and cracking. All night your ears keep watch over that sound the way a mother's ears keep watch over a sleeping child. And now there is nothing. Just the wind pressing against the thatch above your head, and your husband breathing beside you, and somewhere down at the other end of the house, behind the wattle hurdle, the heavy wet sigh of the cow. If the fire is dead, truly dead, all the way down through the banked ash to cold stone, then this morning just got an hour longer, because there are no matches. There will be no matches for another 500 years. If the fire is dead, you will kneel on the cold clay floor, striking flint against steel over a little nest of dried moss and charred linen, over and over, your knuckles splitting in the cold until a spark catches. Or you will pull your hood over your head and walk through the dark to a neighbour's house and beg a burning coal in a pot like a poor woman. And everyone in the village will know by mid-morning that Maud let her fire die, and they will say nothing to your face, and they will say plenty behind it. The fire is the first rule. You never let the fire die. So before anything else, before you're even properly a person, you are moving. You push back the covering, which is not a duvet, not a blanket in any sense you would recognise, but a coarse woolen thing over a mattress stuffed with straw, and the straw crackles and stabs at you through the ticking as you slide out. The cold hits your body like water. You sleep in your linen smock, the same one you've worn all week, and it is no protection at all against a March morning in an unheated house where the wind comes straight through the walls. Not through the windows, through the actual walls, because the walls are woven sticks smeared with dried mud and dung, and there are gaps, and the wind knows every one of them. Your bare feet find the floor, packed earth, swept smooth, cold as a grave. You feel your way through the dark, one hand out, past the sleeping shapes of your children on their pallet, 3 of them under one blanket, tangled together for warmth like puppies. You count their breathing without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. It's a habit older than thought. 4 children born, 3 children breathing. You stopped noticing that you count. You will never stop counting. You kneel at the hearth in the middle of the floor. There is no chimney. There will be no chimney in a house like this for generations. The smoke, when there is smoke, rises into the black roof space and finds its way out through the thatch, and everything you own, everything you wear, everything you are smells of it. You dig your fingers into the mound of ash where last night you buried the embers, banked them under their grey blanket the way your mother taught you, the way her mother taught her, and there, deep in the ash, a point of warmth against your fingertips, not dead, sleeping. You could weep with relief, but you don't have time, and anyway your eyes are already stinging from the ash dust. You lean down close, so close your cheek almost touches the hearthstone, and you blow, gently, long, slow breaths, the way you'd soothe a baby. The ember brightens, a tiny red eye opening in the grey. You feed it a wisp of dried grass from the basket beside the hearth, and it catches with a sound like a whisper, a thread of flame no bigger than your thumb, and you feed it twigs, then sticks, snapping them between your hands, and the snapping sounds enormous in the sleeping house. And slowly, slowly, light comes back into the world. Orange light on the underside of your hands. Your hands, in that first firelight, every morning, look like they belong to a woman 20 years older than you. The knuckles are swollen. The skin across the backs is rough as bark. There are cracks along the sides of your fingers that open in cold weather and never quite close until summer, and when you plunge your hands into cold water, which you will do perhaps 30 times today, each crack announces itself individually. You are 31. In your village that is not young and not old. It is the age where a woman has stopped being looked at and started being relied upon, which is worse and better at the same time. Welcome to a village in the English Midlands in the year 1329. Welcome to the last hour of darkness. The house around you, as the fire grows and throws its light outward, is one long room, about 30 feet by 15. At one end, the sleeping places, the chest that holds everything valuable your family owns, which is to say a spare tunic, a linen sheet for burying, a knife, and 11 silver pennies wrapped in a rag. At the other end, behind a woven hurdle, the animals. The cow heavily in calf, due any day now, so pregnant she groans when she shifts her weight. 2 goats, the hens murmuring in their sleep on the beam above. Yes, you sleep in the same building as the livestock. That's normal. Almost everyone you know does. The animals' heat is part of what keeps the house alive through the winter, a great slow furnace of breathing bodies at the end of the room. City people, if you ever met one, might wrinkle their noses. City people don't understand that warmth is warmth, and that in February you'd share your bed with the cow herself if she'd fit. The smell of the house is not something you notice, because it is simply the smell of the world. But let me tell you what it is, because you're a visitor here. It is smoke, first and always, decades of it soaked into every timber. Under that, animal, warm hide, dung, sour milk, the ammonia sharpness of the hens. Under that, humans, 6 of them, who bathe fully perhaps a few times a year, whose clothes are washed when the weather allows, whose bodies live and work and sweat in wool. Under that, earth. The floor itself, damp clay and old rushes, and the ghost of every meal ever cooked over that hearth. And under all of it this morning something new, something you catch as you hang the iron pot on its hook over the young flames. A sweetness that shouldn't be there, coming from the byre end of the house. You go still, the way animals go still. The cow. You take a rushlight, a peeled rush dipped in mutton fat, touch it to the fire, and carry its small, greasy flame down the length of the house, cupping your hand around it, your shadow swinging huge across the walls. You lean over the hurdle. The cow is standing, which is good, but she has turned to face the corner, which is not. Her tail is lifted slightly away from her body. Her flanks, in the rushlight, are moving in long, slow heaves, and on the straw beneath her a string of something glistens. She's starting. Not today, you think. Not today, you old fool. I have bread to bake and it's washing day, and Emma Atterwell is near her own time and half the village is spoken for. But cows do not consult the calendar of women. You know the look of her. It could be an hour from now. It could be tonight. First calf heifers go fast and badly. An old cow like Browning usually manages alone. Usually. You put your hand flat on her flank. The hide shudders under your palm, warm, dusty, alive. Beneath it, something enormous shifts. Not yet, you tell her quietly. Hold it till evening, my girl, I'll be back. She swings her big head around and looks at you with one dark eye and says nothing, because she is a cow, and because you are both females in the same trap and there is nothing to say. You go back to the fire. The pot is beginning to sing. And now, properly, the morning begins. Here is what must happen before the sun is fully up. Water must be fetched. The fire must be built to full cooking strength. Pottage must be started for the day's meals. The animals must be fed and the cow milked. The children must be woken, dressed, fed something and set to their work. Your husband must be fed and sent to the field, because it is ploughing season, and in ploughing season the men leave at first light, and the field takes everything they have. And bread. Today is a baking day, which means the dough you set to rise last night must be worked, shaped, and carried to the Lord's oven, because you are not permitted to have an oven of your own. And yes, we will get to that, because it is exactly as infuriating as it sounds. That is the list. That is before breakfast. And there is no version of the list where anything gets skipped, because every item on it is holding up some other item, the way stones hold up a wall. Start with water. The buckets stand by the door where you left them, empty, because you used the last of yesterday's water on the evening pottage. 2 wooden buckets, bound with willow hoops, and a wooden yoke shaped to fit across your shoulders. You've carried this yoke since you were 12 years old. Your body has literally grown around the shape of it. There is a place on each of your shoulders where the muscle sits differently than it would have. A hard, smooth pad of you, built bucket by bucket over 19 years. You wrap your feet in cloth and push them into your shoes, which are leather bags, really. Ankle height, already damp because leather in March is always damp. You pull your hood over your head, take the yoke, and lift the door latch. The cold outside is a different animal from the cold inside. The inside cold is stale and patient. The outside cold is moving. It comes off the fields in the dark and goes through the wool of your dress, through the linen under it, and finds your skin like it's been waiting all night specifically for you. The sky in the east has gone from black to the colour of a day-old bruise. Underfoot, the mud of the yard has frozen into ridges during the night, and the ridges bite through your thin soles at every step, and you know that by mid-morning the frost will let go and the same mud will be soft again and trying to pull the shoes off your feet, frozen or thawed. Those are the two kinds of ground you get in March. Both of them are trying to hurt you. The well is not yours. Of course it isn't. Your toft, your little plot with its house and yard, has no well. The well is a shared one down the lane past 3 other houses, perhaps 150 paces each way. You will make this walk at least 4 times today, probably 6. Water for cooking, water for washing, water for the animals, water for the brewing if you get to the brewing, which you won't, but a woman can dream. Do the arithmetic with me just once, because after this we'll let the numbers go. A full bucket of water weighs something like 25 pounds. You carry 2, that's 50 pounds across your shoulders, 150 paces, over frozen ruts in the dark. 4 to 6 times a day, every day. That is between 200 and 300 pounds of water moved by your body daily, before we count the milk, the firewood, the grain, the wet washing, the children. A modern person pays money to lift weights in a warm building with rubber floors. You would find that idea so funny you'd have to sit down. At the well there is already someone ahead of you. There is always someone ahead of you. It's Agnes from 2 tofts down, older than you, wider than you, wrapped in a hood so deep her face is just a voice. Mould. Agnes. Cold. It is. That is the entire conversation, and it is also not the entire conversation, because in a village of maybe 40 households, every exchange carries freight. The fact that Agnes is at the well this early means her house is up and working, which she wants known. The fact that you are here right behind her means the same for you. 2 women confirming in 4 words that neither of them is the kind of woman who lets her fire die. You will see Agnes perhaps 5 more times today. The village is a room. Nobody in it is ever really alone, and nobody in it is ever really private, and whether that is a comfort or a cage depends entirely on the day you're having. The well rope is stiff with frost. You haul, hand over hand, and the wet rope burns the cracks in your fingers, and the full bucket comes up swaying, catching the first grey light on its surface. You fill your 2 buckets, settle the yoke across your shoulders, take the weight. There's a way to do this. You bend your knees, hook the bucket ropes, and rise with your back straight, letting your legs do the lifting, not because anyone taught you about spines, but because women who lift wrong don't last, and you have watched women not last. You know what a farm wife's body looks like at 50. You've seen your mother's back curve like a sickle. You rise slow. The yoke settles into its groove on your shoulders. 50 pounds. The ropes creak. You walk. Walking under a full yoke is its own skill. You can't stride. You take short, flat steps, keeping the water dead level, because every slosh is water you carried for nothing, and on frozen ruts every step is a small negotiation. Your breath comes out in clouds. Your shoulders take the weight, then your back, then your hips, then your knees, the load travelling down through you into the frozen ground, and about halfway home the muscles between your shoulder blades begin to burn with a heat that is almost pleasant. Almost. The way the second mile of a run is almost pleasant, and by the door of your house the burn has stopped being pleasant and become simply the truth. You set the buckets down inside the door, easing them the last few inches so nothing spills, and straighten up, and your spine reports in, vertebra by vertebra. 1 trip, the first of 6. Inside, the fire has grown into a proper blaze, and the house has changed from a black box into a home, low and golden and full of moving shadows. Your husband is up, Walter. He's sitting on the bench, pulling on his hose, and he grunts at you, and you grunt back, and that too is an entire conversation. 16 years married. He's not a talker in the morning, neither are you. Talk is for people with spare breath. You pour water into the great pot over the fire, and into it goes the base of everything, the dish that you will eat, in some form at every meal of your life, the dish that 80% of England is eating this morning in 80% of England's houses. Pottage, barley mostly. Handful of dried peas from the sack. Whatever the garden gave that survived storage, which in March means onions gone soft at the shoulders, a wrinkled turnip, leeks, and the dark dried leaves of last summer's kale, crumbled in like tobacco. A lump of bacon fat the size of a walnut, because it is not a fast day. Salt, pinched carefully, because salt is bought, and bought things are counted. No recipe. There was never a recipe. There is only the pot, which has never in your married life been entirely empty, only added to day upon day, a continuous stew flowing through the years, like a slow river with your family drinking from it. The wooden spoon you stir with was your mother's. Its handle is polished to glass where 3 generations of hands have held it, and worn on the leading edge from 100,000 circuits of pots like this one, and it fits your grip the way the yoke fits your shoulders, which is to say it fits you because it made you. The children come awake in stages the way children do. Young Walt first, 10 years old, because he knows the plough team goes out this morning, and his father has promised him he can walk beside the oxen with the goad, which to a 10-year-old boy is knighthood. Then Cecily, 7, dragging the blanket with her to the fire, hair like a bird's nest, silent and blinking. Then the small one, Johnny, 3, who wakes the way he does everything, at full volume mid-sentence, already outraged about something that happened in a dream. You comb Cecily's hair with your fingers while the pottage heats, working out the worst knots, and she leans back into your legs heavy with sleep, and for about 40 seconds you stand there, one hand in your daughter's hair, the other stirring the pot, the fire cracking, the cow shifting in the straw, the wind flattening its hands against the thatch, and it is, briefly, entirely quiet inside you. You get maybe 3 of those moments a day. You've learned to swallow them whole. Then Walter says, "She's near the cow," from down the byre end where he's gone to look, and the moment is over. "Started stringing before dawn," you say. "She'll go tonight, I'd guess, or midday." "I can't be here midday." "I know it. The ploughing. I know it, Walter." You say it without heat. He isn't arguing with you. He's arguing with the day, and the day doesn't listen. The strips must be ploughed. The Lord's land must be ploughed first, in fact, because Walter is a villain, an unfree tenant, which means that in exchange for the 15 acres of scattered strips your family farms, he owes the lord of the manor his labour. 2 days a week, more at ploughing and harvest. This morning, before he can touch one clod of his own land, he will drive the plough team across the Lord's domain, and there is no negotiating with that, because the reeve keeps the tally, and the fines for missing boon work come out of a purse that holds 11 pennies. So if the cow goes at midday, the cow is yours, along with everything else that is yours. You ladle pottage into wooden bowls, it steams. The children eat with horn spoons, hunched over the bowls like small monks, and Walter eats standing, and there is yesterday's bread, the last of it, dense dark stuff of mixed barley and rye called maslin, and you saw it into slices against your chest with the knife, and everyone dips the hard bread in the pottage to soften it, and nobody speaks, because the food is the conversation. You eat last and least and standing up. Not because anyone demands it, because the pot holds what it holds, and the man ploughs all day, and the children are growing, and the arithmetic does itself in your hands as you ladle, without ever passing through your mind at all. Your mother served herself last. Her mother served herself last. It is possible no woman in your line has eaten a full first serving in 300 years. Then Walter takes his hood and his goad, and young Walt bounces after him like the whole cold morning is a festival, and the door bangs, and the two of them dissolve into the grey, off to the ox house to yoke the team, and the house drops from 6 souls to 4, and the level of noise drops by exactly none, because Johnny has discovered that the hens have come down from their beam, and Johnny has opinions about hens. The sun is not yet properly risen. You have been working for an hour and a half. In a moment you'll milk, then the bread. But first you stand at the open door for the space of 3 breaths, looking east, where the sky over the ridge has gone the colour of a peeled apple, and the frost on the thatch of Agnes's roof is beginning to smoke faintly as the light touches it, and a blackbird, the first one, drops its song into the cold like a coin into a well. It is going to be a hard day. They are all hard days. But nobody said it wasn't going to be beautiful. The milking comes next, and the milking is a conversation between your hands and an animal 10 times your weight. You carry the stool and the pail down to the byre end. Browning is calmer now. The strange restlessness of before dawn settled into ordinary cow patience, though you check her tail end again with the rushlight and don't love what you see. You set the 3-legged stool against her flank, on the right side, always the right, because a cow is a creature of ritual, and a cow surprised is a cow that kicks, and a kick from a hind leg like that can break your forearm like a dry stick, and there is no cast, no splint worth the name, no surgeon nearer than the market town, and a farm wife with a broken arm in March is a household disaster on the scale of a fire. So you do everything the same way every time. You speak to her first, low, so she knows where you are. You press your shoulder into her flank, lean your forehead against the great warm wall of her belly, and her hide smells of dust and ammonia and something green, and through your skull you can hear the enormous slow factory of her insides, the gurgle and slosh of a stomach the size of a barrel, and underneath it, if you listen quick and light, the heartbeat of the calf. Then your hands wrap the teat high, thumb and forefinger closing first to trap the milk, then the other fingers rolling down in a wave, and the first stream hits the empty wooden pail with a sound like a struck drum, and the second, and then the rhythm takes over, and the sound softens as the pail fills, drumming to hissing to a deep purring as milk lands on milk. Your hands know this so completely that your mind is free to leave, and it does. It walks ahead through the day, moving tasks around like furniture. The bread must go to the oven by mid-morning. The washing must catch the sun if there is sun. If Emma Atwell's pains start today, and her mother-in-law said last night at the well that she was carrying low and grumbling, then the women will be called, and if the women are called everything else slides, and God and St. Margaret grant that Emma's baby and Browning's calf do not choose the same hour, because you cannot be 2 places, and one way or another you will be needed. Your forearms burn by the end. That's not a poetic burn. Milking is grip work, hundreds of contractions of the forearm, and there are women in your village whose fingers have curled with age into the exact shape of a teat. Hands they can no longer fully open, and everyone knows what work made them, the way everyone knows a blacksmith by his shoulders. Browning gives less this morning, holding back for the calf, which is right and proper, perhaps a gallon. You strip the last of it, stand, kiss her absurdly on her dusty flank because no one is watching, and carry the pail up the house. And here is where the second economy of your morning begins, because milk is not just milk. Milk is a raw material, and you are a factory. Some stays whole for the children. The rest goes toward cheese and butter, because fresh milk cannot be kept, but cheese can climb into autumn, and butter can be sold. And the pennies from butter are, by long custom, the wife's pennies, and those pennies are the entire discretionary budget of your existence. A needle, a ribbon at the fair, a wax candle for the church at your mother's mind day. You skim yesterday's milk with a flat wooden skimmer, lifting the risen cream in soft yellow sheets, sliding it into the crock where cream waits for churning day, and the skimmed milk goes into the cheese pot with a piece of dried calf's stomach to set it, and none of this appears on any record anywhere. The manor rolls will note what Walter ploughs and what Walter owes. What you do between waking and sleeping is written down nowhere at all, which is why, 700 years later, a man named Henry has to stand here in the dark of your house, watching your hands, telling strangers that you existed. You existed. Let the record show. Now, the bread. And with the bread, the morning's first genuine injustice, so brace yourself. The dough has been rising overnight in its wooden trough under a cloth, a great pale body of it, made from your own grain, grown on your own strips, cut by your own family's hands, threshed in your own yard, and you cannot bake it in your own house. Oh, you could, physically. Under a pot in the embers, a small loaf, and for daily flatbread on the bake stone, fine. But proper loaves for the week need a proper oven, and here is the arrangement. The lord of the manor owns the oven. The lord also owns the mill. It is forbidden, actually forbidden, to grind your own grain at home with a hand quern, because every quarter of grain must go to the lord's mill, where the miller takes his multure, his cut, a scoop from every sack, and the lord takes his profit, and then the flour comes home and becomes dough, and the dough must go to the lord's oven, where the baker takes a farthing or a loaf, and the lord takes his profit again. The same grain, taxed twice on its journey from field to mouth, both times by the same man, who did not grow it, has never touched it, and is at this moment asleep in a manor house, with a fireplace in the wall, and glass in the windows. There are women in this village, and you may be one of them, who keep a small hand quern buried under the floor. When the manor court catches a household grinding at home, the quern is confiscated and there's a fine, and one famous story from the abbey town says the monks once paved their parlour floor with the confiscated querns of the townsfolk, tile after tile of ground-down defiance, so that they could walk on it. That story travels from village to village the way such stories do, and every woman who hears it goes quiet in the same way, and files it in the same place. So you punch down the dough. It exhales its beery breath at you, warm and alive, and you tip it onto the floured board and begin to knead. And if you have never kneaded 8 pounds of coarse wholemeal dough, understand that this is not the gentle folding you've seen on television. This is throwing your body weight through the heels of your hands into a resistant mass, over and over, the board thumping, the dough fighting back, and it takes strength. But more than strength, it takes endurance. 10 minutes, 15, your shoulders and wrists and the cracks in your fingers, all filing complaints, flour dust hanging in the firelight, and the dough slowly changing under your hands from shaggy to smooth, from a thing to a creature, until it pushes back like a live belly when you press it. There is a reason every culture on earth put its women's hands in dough and then wrote poems about it. You shape 4 great round loaves, score them, set them on the board, cover them, and now you must carry them across the village to the bakehouse, and here Cecily earns her keep, walking ahead of you carrying the smallest loaf like a crown on a cushion, deadly serious, while you carry the board with the other 3 on your head, one hand steadying it, spine straight, hips doing the balancing, another skill your body learned before your mind did, and Johnny orbits the 2 of you shouting at dogs. The village by now is fully awake, and the lane is a working corridor. Smoke stands up from every roof and then bends all one way in the wind like a field of grey wheat. Geese pour hissing out of a gate, and Cecily holds her loaf higher, out of principle. From the far fields comes the sound of the plough teams, the drivers crying out to the oxen, long musical calls and the jingle and creak of harness, and if you look that way you can see them, tiny in the distance, the teams crawling along the strips, the ploughmen leaning on the stilts, and somewhere among them your Walter and your Walt, turning the cold earth over in long wet slices that catch the light like the backs of fishes. At the bakehouse there is a queue, because there is always a queue, and the queue is the Parliament of Women. Agnes is there, and Emma Atwell's mother-in-law, and the news is confirmed before you've set your board down. Emma's pains came on at first light, slow yet. First child. The midwife, old Isolde from the far end, has been sent for and is with her, and the mother-in-law is here baking because a labouring house eats like a harvest crew, and the women who will sit with Emma must be fed, and this is how the village works. All of it, everything, one long chain of women's hands passing the world along. She'll want you by noon, Mould, the mother-in-law says, not a question. She'll have me, you say. Not a hesitation. Because 8 years ago, when it was you on the straw with your second, the one you don't name out loud, the one whose breathing you still listen for in your sleep, it was Emma's mother who held you up through the worst hour of your life. And these things are not debts exactly. They are older than debts. They are the actual mortar of the actual world, and you would go if your own roof were on fire. You leave your loaves with the baker, marked with your house's mark cut in the top so there's no swapping, and he tells you midday, and you walk home with an empty board and a full head, reshuffling the entire remaining day around a single fixed point. By noon, you will be in Emma Atwell's house, and everything else must either happen before then or learn to wait. It is perhaps 2 hours after sunrise. A modern woman's alarm has just gone off. Home again, and the next 2 hours are a horse race against noon, so watch closely, because this is the part where the title of tonight's story earns itself. First, the washing. Because if the washing doesn't start now, it doesn't happen, and it has already not happened for longer than you'd like to admit. Washing in 1329 is not a chore. Washing is an athletic event with a chemistry component. There is no soap, as you know, soap. There is lye, which you make yourself, by packing wood ash from your own fire into a cloth and pouring water through it, slowly, catching what drips out the bottom, and what drips out the bottom is a caustic alkaline liquid that will, given the chance, eat the skin off your hands, and your hands know this because your hands have given it many chances. The cracks in your fingers are not just from cold, they are from years of lye, which dissolves grease, and does not distinguish between the grease in a dirty smock and the grease in your own skin. You set the big washing trough on its trestles in the yard, because thank God the sun has actually come out, thin and lemony but real. You haul water, trip 3 and trip 4 of the day, 100 pounds across your shoulders, and you heat some of it in the pot. ferrying it out kettle by kettle, and into the trough go the linens, the smocks, the swaddling bands, the sheets, everything that touches skin. Because wool is almost never washed, wool is brushed and aired, but linen takes the body's dirt, and linen must be boiled and beaten, and then you beat it. There is a wooden bat for this, a beetle, like a short flattened club, and you haul each sopping piece onto the slanted washing board, and you beat the dirt out of it, whack, turn, and a wet linen sheet weighs 3 or 4 times its dry weight and handles like a drowned man, and you wring it, and wringing is the sneaky, brutal one, because wringing a big sheet means twisting it against itself with both arms, shoulders, chest, everything, rotating your fists in opposite directions while the thing fights you, and cold grey water gushes over your feet, and after 6 or 7 big pieces your forearms are trembling, and there are white creases pressed into your palms, and your lower back has begun sending up flares. Somewhere in the middle of this, Johnny falls in the duck slop and has to be stripped and scrubbed, adding 1 child-sized item to the wash and subtracting 10 minutes from your life. And Cecily, unasked, takes over, spreading the wrung linen on the hedge and the grass to dry and bleach in the sun, moving down the hedgerow laying out white shapes like a small priestess dressing an altar, and you watch her for a second and see, with the strange double vision of mothers, both a 7-year-old plain at work and the entire rest of her life. She will do this, all of it, this exact yard, or one like it, these exact aching hands, in 20 years. You're looking at the next link of the chain while being one yourself. You spit on the ground against the thought, because it arrived feeling too much like a prophecy, and prophecies about your children are things you do not allow in the yard. While the linen dries, you attack the garden, because March is when the garden either happens or doesn't, and a cottage garden is not decorative. It is a quarter of everything your family will eat. Half a rood of ground behind the house, dug by you, planted by you, weeded by you. Today it needs the winter beds turned, and so you take the spade, which is wooden, a wooden spade with only an iron rim on its cutting edge because iron is money, and you dig. Digging cold clay with a mostly wooden spade is the single most honest piece of exercise on this earth. Foot on the shoulder of the blade, drive it in, feel it grate on a stone, shift, drive again, lever back, and the clay comes up in a slab that weighs like sin and smells like rain and old iron, and you turn it and break it, and again, and your breath goes ragged, and you shed your hood, and steam comes off your shoulders into the March air, actual steam, and a robin materializes at your heel the way robins have materialized at the heels of digging humans for 10,000 years, cocking its head at the turned earth, waiting for worms, entirely unafraid, the one creature in England that regards you purely as a useful large animal, row by row. Beans will go here, when the moon and the priest and your grandmother's rules all agree it's time. Onions there, leeks, kale, warts. In the corner, the herbs that are your pharmacy, because there is no pharmacy. Betony for headaches, fever few, comfrey for bruises and sprains, whose other name is knitbone, and rue and hyssop, and the rest of the green library your mother planted in your head. Remedy by remedy, the way other centuries will memorize phone numbers, you dig for most of an hour. Then you stand, and straightening is a 5-stage process with an audible component, and you press both fists into the small of your back and arch, and look at what you've turned, dark and raw and ready, maybe a third of the plot, and feel the specific satisfaction of visible work, which is the wage that never debases. Then you feed the hens, muck the goat pen, check Browning again, whose waters have not gone but whose patience is visibly thinning. Throw more turves on the fire, stir the pottage, pull Johnny off the wood pile, put the beans to soak for tomorrow, mend the fence hurdle. The goats have been auditioning for weeks, and collect the loaves from the bakehouse. 4 brown domes still ticking with heat, smelling like the inside of the word home. And Cecily carries the small one back with even greater ceremony than before, because now it's real bread. And then the church bell, up the hill, begins to ring the noon angelus. And before its first phrase is finished, you hear the other sound, the one you've been waiting for all morning with one ear, feet running in the lane, and it's the Atwell's girl, 12 years old, cheeks scalded with running, pulling up at your gate with the message you already know. Mistress mauled. Mother says come, it's Emma. Isolde says it's time for the women. You look at Cecily, 7 years old, going on 30. Pottage is on the hook. Johnny stays inside the gate, or he answers to me. If the cow lies down and strains, you run for me. Not walk. Run. Yes, ma'am. You take your hood and the little linen bag that lives on the shelf by the door, the one with the dried raspberry leaf and the birthing girdle charm written out by the priest, science and prayer packed side by side because you take every ally you can get, and you go out the gate faster than you've moved all day. Behind you, your own house, your own fire, your own labouring cow, held together by a 7-year-old. Ahead of you, a neighbour's house, where a 20-year-old girl is about to attempt the most dangerous thing an ordinary person in 14th century England ever does. Because here is the truth we have to carry into that house together, and I'll say it plainly once, so we understand what the women walking up that lane from every direction understand in their bones. Childbirth in this world is the battlefield of women. The numbers are not certain, the records are thin, but the best guesses of the people who study such things say that out of every 100 times a woman does what Emma is about to do, 1 or 2 of those times the mother dies. That sounds small until you do what no one in this village needs to do on their fingers, because they carry the answer in their memories. A woman bearing 6, 8 children across her life rolls those dice again and again and again. Every churchyard in England holds young wives lying next to babies who lived a day. Every man in this village past 40 has stood at a graveside like that, or fears to. And every married woman walking toward Emma's door right now has lain on that straw herself, has been down in that valley and has come back up, and knows exactly how narrow the path is. There is no hospital. There is no doctor. And even if the physician from the market town would come, which he would not for a ploughman's wife, he has never in his life been permitted to attend a normal birth, and knows less about it than Isolde's little finger. There is no anaesthetic. There is no caesarean that a mother survives. That operation in this century is performed only on the dead. There is what there has always been. There is the room, and the fire, and the women. And now you are one of the women. Walk faster. The Atwell house is like your house. One long room, smoke, animals at the far end. Except today it has been transformed, because a birthing house is a house turned inside out according to rules older than anyone can source. The men are gone. That is the first rule and the absolute one. Emma's husband, Hob, a big, slow, gentle man who can carry a full sack of grain under each arm, is standing outside his own gate looking like a chained dog, and he will stay outside, possibly for many hours, possibly for a day, because from the moment labour is established, this house belongs to women, entirely, a female country with closed borders. And this is one of the very few times and places in Emma's whole life where that will be true, and the anthropologists of a later age will chew on that for decades. Every door in her world is opened or closed by men, except this one, the most dangerous one, where men are not merely unnecessary but banished. Inside, the windows have been stopped up with cloth, and the door hung with a blanket, so the room is dim and close and warm as a held breath. Firelight only. Keep the draughts out, keep the light low, keep the room like the inside of the body, that's the wisdom. And you can argue with the theory, but the practice makes a kind of cave, a den, and animals know something about dens. The room smells of smoke and sweat and crushed herbs, of the vinegar and water Isolde washes her hands in, not because anyone alive knows what a germ is, but because clean-smelling hands are seemly, and here and there ritual points the same direction as the microscope by pure luck. There are maybe 6 women. Emma's mother-in-law feeding the fire, Agnes, because Agnes is always everywhere, warming linen cloths over her arm, 2 young wives murmuring by the wall, old Isolde, the midwife, and in the middle of it, Emma, 20 years old, walking because Isolde's first commandment for a slow first labour is walking, round and round the hearth, one hand pressed under her belly, hair loose and stuck to her face, wearing only her smock, and when the pain comes, and you can see it come, see it take her like weather, she stops and grips whatever woman is nearest, and this next hour is where you learn what the women are actually for. They are the equipment. There are no bars to hold, no beds that tilt, no machines. There are forearms. Emma hangs off Agnes's forearms through one pang, off yours through the next, and you brace like a fence post and let her drag her whole weight down through your aching shoulders, and she makes a sound low in her chest, not a scream. Screaming comes later if it comes. This is deeper, a cattle sound, the sound the body makes when it takes over management from the mind. And Isolde watches everything with eyes like a hawk over a hayfield and says mildly, "Good. That's good, my duck. Waste nothing on noise yet. You'll want it after." Isolde is somewhere past 60, which in this parish makes her a walking archive. Hands like tree roots, an apron gone soft as cloth of gold from washing, and in her head, unwritten, unwritable since she cannot write, the accumulated case notes of 40 years and several hundred deliveries. Which presentations turn easily? Which bleeding is the ordinary kind and which is the other kind? What a labour sounds like when it's working and what it sounds like when it isn't. Universities will not admit women for another 6 centuries, so this is where the science lives, in old women's hands, passed palm to palm like fire. You take your place in the rotation, and the afternoon settles into its rhythm, which is the strangest rhythm in the world, terror and boredom braided together. Between pains there is gossip, honest-to-God gossip, someone's ale, someone's husband, the reeve's new cloak and where the money came from, and the women laugh softly, and Emma herself laughs at one point, drooping there on your arms, laughs at something Agnes says, and then the laugh bends in the middle and turns into the next pang, and you hold her up, and over her bowed back Agnes keeps telling the story, deadpan, because that is also equipment, keeping the ordinary world audible in the room so the labouring girl can hear that it still exists and intends to have her back. They feed her sips of ale with honey. They wipe her face. They rub her back with warmed oil, hard, with the heels of their hands, right where she says no, lower there. They walk her, they kneel her, they lean her over the bed. Isolde greases her hands with goose fat and examines her and announces progress in her own units. A finger, 2 fingers, a crown piece, and the women receive each report like a village receiving harvest news, and under everything, quietly, the other preparations. You notice them because you know to look. The good beeswax candle from the church standing ready unlit, the scrap of parchment with the charm of St. Margaret, patroness of childbirth, who was swallowed by a dragon and burst out unharmed, and so is the one you want beside you when a body must open and let a life out. And you know, all of you know without one word, that if it turns bad, truly bad, the priest will be sent for, and if he cannot come in time, the law of the church says that Isolde herself, a peasant woman, may baptize the child with her own hands and any water in reach. The one sacrament a woman may perform, granted to midwives precisely because the church knew perfectly well how often it would be needed. None of that is spoken. All of it is present, folded into the room like the smoke. The afternoon wears. Your arms ache from bracing. Somebody's girl runs in twice with word from your own house, dispatched by Cecily. Pottage fine, Johnny alive, cow up and eating. You allow yourself to unclench one notch, and then, somewhere around what must be the 4th hour, the room changes. Emma's sound shift register down, and Isolde comes up off her stool like 20 years just fell off her, and says the words, "Now then, now we work." I'm not going to walk you through the next hour blow by blow, not because it isn't the most dramatic thing that will happen in this village all season, but because it belongs to Emma, and even a story has manners. I'll give you what the room gives you. The women pack in close. Emma is propped, half kneeling, against her mother-in-law's whole body, a human birthing chair, arms locked under hers, and you have one leg and Agnes has the other, and Isolde is down before her on the rush floor, talking the whole time, a low even river of instruction and blasphemy-adjacent encouragement, when to push, when to pant, when to bloody well stop pushing. Emma, stop, breathe, let it stretch, there's my good girl. The fire cracks. The pains come like tide now, no gaps to speak of. Emma screams twice, and nobody hushes her. Screaming as for now, this is what it was saved for, and the second scream cracks in the middle into a huge grunting effort that comes from somewhere geological, and Isolde says sharp, "Head, ladies. Easy, easy, easy." And then there is a moment, one endless suspended moment, where the entire room stops breathing. 6 women and a girl frozen around a point of firelight, and the wind flattens its hands against the thatch, and somewhere far off a plough team lows on the cold field. And then a sound that has ended this exact silence in this exact way for as long as there have been rooms. Thin, furious, astonished. The single, angriest small sound in creation. The room exhales. Somebody laughs, and it turns into crying halfway out. Agnes says something obscene and thankful in the same 4 words. Emma is sobbing and laughing and asking a question with no words in it, and Isolde answers it, lifting the slick, furious, howling scrap of it up into the firelight. "A girl," she says. "A whole one. Loud one too, she'll do." A girl. A whole one. In this room, from these women, that is a coronation. You watch the next several minutes through a blur you don't apologize for. The cord tied with a linen thread in 2 places, cut with the good knife. The baby rubbed pink in warmed cloths, howling grievances the entire time, correctly. The afterbirth managed, and Isolde's hawk eyes on the bleeding, watching, and then the small nod she gives, the nod that means the ordinary kind, the nod on which everything hangs, and only when she gives it does the last taut wire in the room slacken. The candle is lit now, in thanks instead of desperation. Emma, washed, propped in clean linen you helped beat clean in someone's yard, holds her daughter with the stunned face of every first mother in history, that face that says nobody told me, though everybody told her. Somebody finally goes to the door and tells Hob, and you hear him outside, a big, slow, gentle man, make a sound like a beam breaking, and then he's allowed in, briefly, hat in hands, into the country of women, walking as if the floor were made of eggs, to see his wife and his daughter, and Emma looks up at him and says, "You can stop looking like that. We're all right." And Hob laughs, and it comes out wet. Emma will lie in for days now, kept warm and fed by this same relay of women, and in a few weeks she'll walk to the church to be blessed, and there will be ale and cakes, and her daughter will be carried to the font by godparents before the week is out. Because you do not wait. In this world, you never wait. You get the soul under cover the way you get hay in before rain. You step out of that hot, dim, triumphant room into the late afternoon, and the cold light hits you like a slap and a gift at once, and the sky's gone high and pale, and you stand in the lane for a moment while your eyes adjust, arms trembling, smock sweated through, ravenous, wrung out like your own washing, and down the lane, small in the distance, coming out of your own gate, running, not walking, running, is Cecily, the cow. You run. There is nothing left in your legs, and you run anyway, because the body keeps a hidden account for exactly this. And Cecily turns and runs beside you, gasping out her report in pieces, cow down, straining a long time, feet showing, but only feet, ma'am, only feet, and no nose. And she watched it like you told her, and it wasn't coming, and you say, "Good girl, you did it right," and save the rest of your breath. Only feet and no nose. Understand what's at stake, because it is not sentiment. Browning is not a pet. Browning is the single most valuable thing your family owns. She is milk, which is cheese and butter, which is protein for your children and pennies in your purse. Her calf is next year's wealth on 4 legs. If the cow dies tonight, your household drops through a floor. It will take years to climb back to, and there is no insurance, no vet within reach or budget, no safety net below you except the charity of neighbours who are all standing one bad season from the same floor themselves. Families in this village have been broken by a dead cow. Broken, sold up, gone to beg on the roads. You have watched it happen to better managers than you. So when you come through your own door into the smell of your own smoke and lean over the hurdle and see her, down flat on her side in the straw, flank heaving in great laboured swells, and see at her tail end exactly what Cecily described. 2 small yellow-white hooves and slick forelegs to the knee, and then nothing. No muzzle resting on them where a muzzle should be. You do not spend 1 second on despair. You have no seconds. You take off your hood and roll your sleeves past the elbow and say to Cecily, "Warm water, goose fat from the crock, and the rope halter off the peg. Head back." That's what no nose means. The calf's head has bent back along its own body somewhere inside, and a calf cannot be born folded like that, and it will not fix itself. And every straining push Browning gives is jamming it tighter, and she has been at it, by Cecily's telling, the better part of an hour, and cows do not have forever. There is a woman 2 villages over famous for the saying that God helps the herd that helps itself, and there is no one to send for who knows more than you do. Because the person people send for this, in this lane, is you. You have done this twice in your life with your own hands and stood by your father a dozen times before that. 3 times then. Tonight makes 3. You grease your right arm from fingertips to past the elbow, the fat cold and then instantly warm on your skin, and you kneel behind her in the straw. and you wait for the space between contractions, and then you go in along the calf's forelegs, and I will tell you what that is like exactly once. It is heat and immense soft pressure, and the total blindness of working by touch alone inside a living creature, your cheek pressed against the cow's haunch, your eyes open and useless, staring at nothing, your whole mind moved down into your fingertips, cannon bone, knee, shoulder, and then the wall of contraction comes and the whole passage clamps on your arm like a millstone, and you can do nothing, nothing at all except lay your forehead on her hide and breathe through it, while your hand goes white inside her, and Browning groans, and Cecily stands at the hurdle white-faced holding the water, and you say through your teeth, in a voice you keep as level as a table because 2 frightened females in this byre is the maximum, and Browning has both places taken, "It's all right. This is just how it goes. Talk to her head, tell her anything." And your 7-year-old walks to that great tossing head and kneels and begins telling the cow in a wobbling, steady little voice about her day. The pressure ebbs. You work fast. Along the neck, and there, folded back against the ribs, an ear, a bony brow, a slick jaw. You get 2 fingers into the angle of the jaw, careful, careful. A calf's jaw snaps like green willow, and now the true work, because you must push the calf back to make room to turn its head, push against the whole tide of the cow's labour, and this is strength, real strength. The strength, the yoke and the beetle and the spade and 19 years of buckets built into you, not for its own sake, but for this exact minute. And you brace your left hand on her pin bone and push, and the sweat runs into your eyes and your shoulder screams, and the calf gives, slides back a hand's breadth into the deep, and in the space you've bought you fold your hand around that jaw and draw the head around, feeling it come, feeling the neck unbend, until a nose, an actual nose, settles wet and right into the channel between the forelegs where God and every herdsman since Abel intended it to be. You get the soft rope on the fetlocks then, above the joints, and when the next contraction gathers you lean back and pull with it, not against it, with it, timing your strength into hers, once, twice, and on the 3rd great heave the head crowns into the lamplight and then the shoulders, and then in one enormous rushing slither the whole calf arrives at last into the world and the straw and your lap. 30 wet kilos of it steaming in the cold air and lies still. You're moving before your heart finishes its next beat, clearing the nose with your fingers, grabbing a twist of straw and scouring its ribs, hard, rough, the way its mother's tongue would. Come on, and you seize its hind legs and lift its dripping weight head down and swing it once, and something in its chest unsticks and it coughs, a wet ridiculous sound, and sneezes and takes a huge shuddering offended breath, and begins, feebly and then less feebly, to shake its ears. Alive, Browning rolls up onto her chest with a groan that shakes the floor, turns her big head, and begins to lick her calf as if you and the entire crisis had never existed. Long rasping strokes, rumbling to it down in her throat, a sound cows make at no other time in their lives, and the calf answers in a bleat like a hinge, and Cecily is laughing and crying exactly the way a room full of women laughed and cried 2 hours ago 3 doors down. And you sit back in the bloody straw with your ruined arm and your sweated smock and start to laugh yourself, helplessly, at the sheer arithmetic of this day. 2 labours, 2 deliveries, 1 village, 1 afternoon. sun up to sundown, and you've hauled 300 pounds of water, kneaded and carried the week's bread, beaten a household's linen clean, dug a third of a garden, held a woman through her first birth, and turned a calf's head inside a cow with your bare hand, and the entire recorded history of this day, the only trace it will leave in any document on earth, is a line in the manor roll noting that Walter did his ploughing. It's a heifer calf, by the way, a girl, a whole one, loud one too, she'll do. Walter and young Walt come in at dusk, mud to the thighs, done to the bone, and stop dead at the hurdle, and Walter looks at the calf butting under its mother, and at the straw, and at your arm, and being a man of the 14th century and of few words, he does not say any of the things a later century would script for him. He looks at you for a long moment in the firelight. Then he says, "Head back, head back." He nods slowly, the way he'd nod at a field ploughed dead straight. "I married well," he says, to the cow apparently, and goes to wash, and that from Walter is a ballad, an epic, a monument in bronze, and both of you know it, and you turn away so he won't see you smile, and he turns away so you won't see him do the same, and the pottage, miraculously, thanks to a 7-year-old, has not burned. Supper then, in the blue hour, with the door barred and the fire built up and the whole family folded in around it. And let's slow down here, because the evening's when this house shows you what it actually is. The pottage is better tonight than this morning, because pottage is always better at night, having had all day to think about itself, and because you crumble in some of the new bread, and because Walter, in silent commemoration of the calf, goes to the chest and cuts everyone a sliver of the bacon, off the flitch that hangs in the smoke of the roof, hard and mahogany, dark and salty enough to make your eyes water. And Johnny receives his sliver with both hands like a relic. Young Walt talks. Young Walt has walked beside a plough team for one entire day, and is now, functionally, an oxherd, a philosopher of oxen, an authority. He explains to the table how you turn a team at the headland. He explains the names of all 8 beasts and their characters, how the near side leader is wise and the offside wheeler is a villain and a schemer. He demonstrates the goad cry until his father tells him the oxen are trying to sleep 3 fields away. He's so tired his eyes keep unfocusing between sentences, and so proud he cannot stop producing them. And you watch him over your bowl, this boy shaped like a smaller Walter down to the way he sits, and file the evening whole into the place where you keep them. Cecily says almost nothing, because Cecily is spending the meal being casually, elaborately close to the hurdle, checking the calf every 4 spoonfuls, having appointed herself to its household. The calf, for its part, has found its legs, lost them, found them again, and successfully located supper, and the sound of it feeding, that rhythmic urgent tug and gulp, is now part of the noise of the house, a new instrument in the nightly music, and the nightly music is this: fire, cracking and shifting, the fundamental drone under everything, the click of horn spoons on wooden bowls, wind working the thatch, which is not one sound but 100, creaks and sighs and little scurries that may be the wind and may be mice, and are honestly both. The animals settling, the goats' small complaints, the hens burbling as they pack together on the beam Browning's great sighs. Rain, when it comes, arriving on the roof not as drumming, the thatch is too deep for drumming, but as a soft pressure, a hush laid over the house like a hand. No traffic, no hum of wires, no refrigerator ticking over. When the wind drops, the silence outside the walls is so complete that you can hear a dog bark in the next village, a mile off, and know whose dog. After the meal there is no such thing as leisure, exactly, but there is a change of gear. sitting down work. This is when the distaff comes out, and if there is one object that stands for your entire sex in this century, it is the distaff, the spinning stick, so much so that the female side of a family is called, in law and in common speech, the distaff side. Every woman spins, all the time, in every gap. There are perhaps no idle female hands in this entire kingdom after dark, because it takes several spinners to keep one weaver in thread, and cloth is money, and so you park the distaff under your left arm and draw out the wool, and set the spindle dropping and twirling at the end of its growing thread, and your fingers do the rest without you, drafting the fibres, feeding the twist, winding on, and the truth is you could do this dead drunk in a moving cart, and some women effectively do, spinning while they walk to market, spinning while they argue, spinning while they rock a cradle with one foot, converting every unclaimed minute of their lives directly into thread. Walter mends harness by the fire, wax and all and leather, muttering at it. Young Walt is asleep, sitting up inside a minute, and gets steered to the pallet. And this is the hour when talk finally happens, the day's news chewed over low between the two of you while your hands work. Emma's girl, the Reeves mood, whether the far strip should go to oats or barley, the rumour from the carter that the king's purveyors are buying grain again down the vale, which is a sentence that makes every husbandman's jaw go tight, because when the king's men buy, the price is the king's price, and the paying is the king's leisure. And you tell him you're thinking about the brewing, and here, 1 minute on the brewing, because it is the best kept secret of the medieval village economy. Everyone drinks ale. Everyone. Adults, children, everyone. Morning to night, weak ale mostly. A couple of pints of small beer being simply what hydration looks like when the water is a shared well, downhill from everyone's midden. Ale does not keep. It sours in days, so it is brewed constantly, in small batches, house by house, and it is brewed by women. The alewife, the brewster, is a fixture of every village in England, and when a wife brews a batch beyond her household's needs, she sells it, sticks a pole with a bush on it out over her door as the sign, and for that week her kitchen is the village pub. The manor court finds the Brewsters constantly, for weak ale, for wrong measures, for prices, and the historians who read those court rolls centuries later will realise the fines were so regular and so universal that they weren't really punishments at all. They were in effect a licence fee. The cost of doing business, and the lists of names in those rolls are one of the only places where the working women of this century appear in writing. Hundreds of them, brewing and selling and getting fined and brewing again, a whole shadow economy run from kitchens. Your own mother brewed, you brew when the malt allows, the pennies are yours. And in a life where almost nothing is yours, the width of that sentence is hard to overstate. Which brings us, while the spindle drops and the fire burns down, to the ledger of your existence, and I'll keep it honest, because this channel doesn't sell you a postcard. In law, you barely exist. You are a femme covert, a covered woman, covered by your husband the way a chick is covered by a hen. His legal person swallows yours. You cannot own the land you work. Your labour, your endless cathedral of labour, belongs, on parchment, to him and through him to the Lord. If Walter dies, the Lord's court will decide your widowhood. You'll keep a share by custom, and custom is real, but you may also find yourself pressured to remarry a man of the manor's convenience, because a holding wants a ploughman, and a woman alone on 15 acres is, to the steward's eye, a problem to be solved. The priest on Sunday tells you that you are the daughter of Eve, through whom sin entered the world, and also in the same sermon that you should model yourself on the Queen of Heaven, and you're given no instructions for standing on both of those stools at once. And yet, walk through this village at noon and tell me who runs it. The men are in the fields, all of them, all day, all. Everything else, the food, the fire, the cloth, the children, the garden, the dairy, the poultry, the brewing, the tending of the sick, the laying out of the dead, the delivering of the born, every gear of the actual machine of daily life turns under women's hands. The men grow the grain. Everything that happens to the grain afterward, everything that turns it into a living family instead of a heap of seeds, is yours. The law calls you covered. The village, when the cow goes wrong, or the baby turns, or the fever comes, calls you by name and comes running to your gate. Both of those things are true at once. You carry them the way you carry the yoke. It's heavy. Your shoulders grew a place for it. The fire is embers now. You bank it, the last ritual, ash drawn over the coals in the pattern your mother's hands taught yours, tucking the fire in like a fourth child, and you say over it, quietly, the little verse for the smooring that is half prayer and half spell and all habit, and the light goes down to a dull secret orange, and the house goes dark and you find the bed by feel. Your body, horizontal at last, files its full report. Shoulders, the yoke, the beetle, Emma's whole weight. Forearms, the milking, the wringing, the calf. Back, everything. Hands, burning at every crack, lie and cold and goose fat and rope. Feet, wet since dawn. You lie there and ache in stereo, and beside you Walter is asleep between one breath and the next, the way field men sleep like a door closing, and down the room the children breathe. 1, 2, 3, and you count them without meaning to, and beyond the hurdle the new calf stirs and its mother rumbles to it in the dark. Tomorrow there is no baking, but there is churning, and the far garden, and Emma's house to feed, and the ash light to pour, and water, always water. 6 trips, 300 pounds, but that's tomorrow. You did today, all of it, every stone of it, and nobody wrote it down, and everybody within half a mile of this bed, human and animal, is a leave tonight partly because of it. Sleep now, mould. You've earned it twice over. We'll stay a little longer, you and I, listeners, because a day is a coin, and a life is a purse. And before we let the dark have us, I want to show you the rest of the purse. Because here is the thing about the day we just lived. It was a Tuesday. An ordinary, unmarked, mid-March Tuesday, chosen almost at random. The 2 births made it memorable. The labour around them made it typical. So let the days run now, the way they run for her, and watch what the year does to that morning routine. Because the year does not leave it alone. The year turns the dial. Spring deepens and the mornings come earlier, which sounds like mercy and is the opposite. Because in this world you work the daylight. All of it, whatever there is. The garden explodes into demand. The beans go in and mould plants them the old way. 3 in a hole, 1 for the rook, 1 for the crow, 1 to let grow, and then spends the next fortnight at war with the actual rooks, who did not agree to the terms. The hens come back into full lay, and the eggs must be gathered before the crows and sold or bartered before they spoil. The calf, who has acquired a name because Cecily was left unsupervised with the naming, and the name is Primrose, and the family must now live with that, doubles in size and mischief. And the ewe's lamb up on the common, and there are days when Mald walks out at first light with the other wives to help with the lambing, because lambing is carving in miniature, and the same hands are wanted, and comes home with the particular smell of it in her clothes. Lanolin and blood and turned earth, the smell of the year's hinge. Then the long light, June. Sheep shearing, when the whole village smells of grease wool, and the sacks stand in the church house like fat men, and the wool money, the one real money of the year, gets argued over in every house. Then haymaking, and haymaking is the great communal test of nerve, because hay must be cut, dried, turned and carried between rains, and God sends the rain without consulting the reeve. So when the weather window opens, the entire village walks out into the meadows together. Every man, every woman, every child who can hold a rake. And for 3 or 4 days the meadows are the village. Long lines of mowers hissing through the grass with their scythes, and behind them the women, mauled among them, spreading and turning the swathes with wooden rakes, hour upon hour, the sun hammering down, the air thick with the sweet dust of dying grass, arms moving in a rhythm that outlasts thought, forearms rashed red with hayseed, sweat stinging in every crack of every hand, and small beer going round in leather jacks warm as bath water and tasting, at that hour, in that field, better than anything you will ever drink in your life. And here, one evening in that haymaking week, comes the closest thing this story has to a view from the mountain top, so take it with her. The last load of the day has gone up the lane, creaking on the great cart, boys riding the top of it like sparrows on a whale. The light has gone long and golden and grainy, and Mould sent up the hill to the church with the other wives to carry the evening food to the men still working the far meadow, stops at the churchyard wall on the highest ground the parish owns to shift the basket on her hip, and turns, and looks, and there it is, the whole of her world in one view at 1 hour, gilded. The village below, one crooked street of thatch, every roof breathing its thread of smoke straight up into the still evening. The great open fields around it, no hedges, no walls, just the vast striped quilt of the strips. Hundreds of them, each one somebody's, each one known by name, her families scattered among them, and she can find every single one from here the way you can find your own children in a crowd. The green common with its slow constellation of cattle, primrose, a pale dot, orbiting browning. The meadows by the stream, half shorn, striped green and gold, dotted with the tiny toiling figures of everyone she has ever known. The mill, the manor house among its trees, glass windows catching the low sun and holding it, little rectangles of fire, wealth literally shining. The road, the one road, going over the far ridge to the market town and beyond that to everywhere else on earth, which is a place she will never go. She has never seen a map of England. She'll never see a map of anything. This, from this wall, is the largest thing she will ever see at once, the full extent of the visible universe as issued to her, and it measures perhaps 3 miles by 2, and you could pity that. A modern person, holding a phone with a whole planet in it, could stand at that wall and pity her and be entirely wrong. Because look at her face. She is not looking at a prison. She is doing what a captain does from a quarterdeck. That strip needs weeding before Sunday. That roof of Agnes's wants patching before autumn. She'll mention it. The stream is low, the oats are early. There is a woman in this landscape, roughly her own age, who owns it all in law. The Lord's lady behind those burning windows, and there is a real sense, standing at this wall in the level light, in which Muld holds more of it in working knowledge than that lady holds in deeds. Every lane, every ditch, every fever, every birth. The parchment says whose it is. The evening light, falling on a woman with hay in her hair and a basket on her hip, says whose it also is, and always was. She stands there for the length of 10 breaths, which for her is a holiday. Then the basket, and the hill, and down. August, and everything the year has promised or threatened comes due at once, because August is harvest, and harvest is the whole point of everyone. For 3-4 weeks the village turns itself inside out into the fields. The men reap, bent double in lines, sickles flashing. The women follow, gathering and binding the sheaves, and binding is mould's work, armful after armful of cut wheat swung together, knee in it, a twist of straws for the tie, stack it next, 1,000 times a day, stubble slashing at her ankles till they bleed, thistle spines in her fingers, chaff down her neck, in her eyes, in her teeth. The sun a flat iron on her back, and no one stops, because the sky's the enemy and the sky's patient. Children glean behind the wagons, picking the dropped ears, and by ancient custom the gleanings belong to the gleaners, and a sharp-eyed family of gleaners can pick a week's bread out of the stubble. So even Johnny works the harvest. Age 3, staggering with his fistful of wheat like a tiny drunk carrying flowers. And when the last cart comes home, the whole village walks in behind it shouting, and there is a supper in the Lord's own barn, the one feast of the year that flows downhill, goose and ale and enough of it, and someone has a pipe and someone has a drum, and Mould dances, actually dances, with Walter, who dances like a plough turning at a headland, with immense deliberation, and everyone is sunburnt and half lame and briefly, collectively, gloriously safe, because the barn is full, and a full barn is the only sentence in this entire world that means what safe means. Then the year folds down, October, and the pig is killed, and pig-killing day is a festival of work with Mould at the centre of it, because nothing is wasted, and the wasting or saving is women's skill. The blood caught and stirred for puddings, the fat rendered in the big pot for laird and for lights, the flitches salted and hung in the chimney smoke, the small meats eaten fresh in the 1 week of the year when there is meat at every meal, and her hands ache in a completely new register from the salting, brine finding every crack like fire finding straw, and the house smells of it for a month, and the smell is wealth. November, the great mud. The light collapses, dawn crawling later, dusk sprinting earlier, until the working day is a grey sliver, and the fire becomes the family's second sun. Spinning season in earnest, mending season, the season of sitting close. And then the dark feast, the 12 days of Christmas, when custom itself orders the world to stop, and it actually stops. No plough moves in the 12 days, and there is ale in every house and green boughs over every door, and the Lord owes his tenants a Christmas dinner, and the church glows with every candle the parish owns, and on the coldest nights the village fiddles and sings against the dark exactly the way the fire on her hearth burns against it, defiantly, communally, one flame fed by everyone, and underneath every one of those days spring and hay and harvest and snow, unchanged, unchangeable, the morning, her morning, the ember under the ash, the buckets, the pot, the hands. The year turns the dial, but it never turns it to off. There is no off. There will be no off for the whole length of her life, and she has known that since she was old enough to carry a hen, and here is the thing I most want you to understand about her, the thing that separates her from pity. She is not waiting for off. Off is not a thing she has lost. It is a thing that has not been invented. What she has instead is rhythm, the deepest one available to a human being, the day inside the season, inside the year, inside the life, and she is not gritting her teeth through it. She is riding it. the way her hands ride the milking and her hips ride the yoke, and there are worse ways. Whisper it. There may be no better way for a human animal to spend its allotted daylight than lifting real weight in real weather for people it loves, and lying down at night too tired to be afraid. Your gym routine is a joke compared to her morning. But there's never really the point, was it? The point is what all that lifting was attached to. Every rep of her endless workout was attached directly by the shortest possible line to someone's supper, someone's warmth, someone's breathing in the dark. She never once exercised. She only ever carried. And now the year has come all the way around, and it is March again, and cold again, and dark again, and she is 32 now, and there is a new heifer in the byre, and a new baby 3 doors down who is learning to walk on Emma's floor, and it is the end of a Tuesday very like the one we shared, and Mould is lying down in the dark of her own house, and this time we're not going to leave before she sleeps. Stay with her now. This last part is for both of you. But before sleep takes her, let me give you 3 more pieces of her year that I stepped over, 'cause you can't understand the weight of a life from its labours alone. You need its Sundays, its markets, and its fears. Every life is made of those 3 metals in different proportions. Here are hers, the Sundays first. Once a week the whole machine is commanded to stop, and mostly it obeys. No plough, no cart, no beetle on the washing board, though the animals do not observe the Sabbath, and the fire does not, and the pottage does not. So a woman's Sunday is a lighter yoke rather than no yoke at all. But the family washes faces and hands, and puts on the better tunic if there is a better tunic, and walks up the hill together with everyone else in the parish, the whole village funneling out of its lanes into one procession, and files into the one building for miles built of stone, and you have to stand inside that building the way she stands in it to understand what it is. Her house is dark, low, brown, made of earth and sticks and straw, and everything in it is the colour of earth and sticks and straw. This building is tall. The ceiling is higher than 4 houses. The walls are painted, actually painted, every surface, in colours that exist nowhere else in her world, reds and blues and gold, saints in glory, Christ in judgment, and over the chancel arch the great doom, the painting of the last day, the dead climbing out of their graves on the left, and the saved rising, and the damned going down into a painted hell full of painted devils on the right. And she has looked at that wall every Sunday of her life, and she could draw it with her eyes shut, and it is quite literally the only picture she's ever seen. There is no other image in her life, no photograph, no page, no screen. One wall of pictures, renewed weekly for 70 years if she lives 70 years. Imagine what a picture is worth at that exchange rate. The service is in Latin, which she does not speak, and the priest faces away, and none of that is the point. The point is the standing together, the whole parish in one room, living and in the floor and the yard outside dead, because her parents are under the grass 10 steps from the door, and the babe she doesn't name is there too, in the corner where the little ones go, and every Sunday, going in and coming out, she passes them and touches the churchyard wall at the same place with the same 2 fingers, and no one has ever seen her do it in 30 years, except every single woman in the village, all of whom have their own wall, their own 2 fingers, their own corner of the grass. Church is also parliament, market, newspaper, and theatre. In the churchyard after Mass, the village conducts itself. Banns are cried, bargains struck, quarrels aired, betrothals leaked. The reeve announces the week's boon works and is hated for it in a comfortable traditional way. It is the 1 hour when Mull stands still among adults with her hands empty, and if you watch her in that churchyard, laughing at something with Agnes and Emma, the baby on Emma's hip grabbing at all three of them impartially, you will see something the documents will never show you. That this brutally worked woman is also visibly having a life. Friendship at this depth, decade upon decade, everyone witness to everyone, is a wealth the age of privacy will quietly trade away and then spend 3 centuries buying back in fragments. The market next. 4 or 5 times a year, when there is butter and cheese and eggs enough beyond the household, Mould goes to town, and going to town is an expedition. The market town is 6 miles off, which means walking 2 hours and more each way, leaving in the dark with a basket on her head, and the eggs packed in straw, and last night's rain still in the ruts. She goes with 2 or 3 other wives, always, because the road is the road, and women together are a company, while a woman alone is a temptation to the kind of men who wait where roads go through woods. And the town, when its grey walls finally lift over the hedgerows, is her metropolis. Perhaps 1,500 souls live there, which to you is a village, and to her is Babylon. The noise arrives before the gate does, a low sea sound of voices and hammers and beasts, and inside the gate the street funnels her into more human beings than she will otherwise see in a season. Stalls crammed rail to rail, fishwives crying salt herring, a spicer's stall breathing out pepper and cinnamon, actual cinnamon, a smell from the other side of the earth priced accordingly for lords, but smelling is free, and she stands in front of that stall for a moment every single time, eyes half shut, breathing in a landscape she cannot picture. There are jugglers some market days. There is once, unforgettably, a man with a dancing bear, and she talks about the bear for years, everyone does. The bear enters the village's permanent collection. She sells her butter and cheese with the flat-eyed skill of a woman who knows to the farthing what her arms are worth and does not need any lessons from anyone in this story about negotiation. Thank you. And with the pennies, her pennies, she buys salt and needles and a hank of dyed thread, and, after standing over it through 3 separate visits across 2 years, a small copper brooch, plain, round, the size of a fingernail, the single object she will ever in her life buy purely because it is pretty. She wears it at her throat on Sundays. When she dies, decades from now, it will go to Cecily, and Cecily's daughter will have it after, and somewhere down that chain it will be lost in a ditch or melted in a fire and exit history entirely, like everything, like everyone. And none of that changes what it is on the walk home from market, riding at her collarbone, catching the afternoon light, proof in metal that she was ever once, in the middle of all that carrying, simply a woman who liked a thing and got it. And then the fears. Because I promised you honest, and the honest part is this. Everything you have watched her build, the fed children, the full barn, the banked fire, all of it stands on ground that can move, and she knows the ground can move, because it has moved in living memory, hers. She was a girl during the great rains. You know it, from the far side of history as the Great Famine. The years after 1315, when the weather broke across all of northern Europe, when it rained through whole summers, when the grain rotted standing and the seed corn was eaten, and the animals died of murrains in heaps, and something like 1 person in 10 in the worst regions did not live to see it end. She knows it as the years her family ate bread stretched with ground beans and worse, as the year her father sold the second cow, as the winter two households at the end of the lane simply ceased, went to the roads and were not spoken of, and as the reason why, to the end of her life, she cannot watch a child leave pottage in a bowl without her jaw setting, and why the full barn at harvest home makes some of the old people cry in a way the young ones don't quite understand. That is the fear under the floor of every house in this village. Not monsters, weather and fever and the fragility of a world with no warehouses behind it, where the distance between enough and nothing is one bad summer wide. And there is one fear I can see from here that she cannot, and I will say it softly and only once, because she gets to live her life without it, and I won't be the one to put it in her house. It is 20 years away, in this year of 1329. It will come from the east, along the roads, off the ships, in the year 1348, and it will do to England in 18 months what the famine did in 7 years, and multiply it. And the historians will argue forever whether it took a third of everyone or nearly half. Her village will not be spared. No village will be spared. Whether she herself, by then a grandmother, is taken or left, I do not know, and I have decided not to decide. I will tell you only this because it is true, and it is the right kind of true for the hour of night we've reached. The village survives, not unbroken, but alive, and it survives, when it does, on exactly the strength you watched all day today, on stored food and shared labour, on women who know herbs and know birthing and know how to keep a fire and a household alive through a dark time. Because keeping households alive through dark times is the single thing they have practiced every morning of their entire lives. When the worst thing in the millennium comes down that road, it will find, standing in its path, in house after house, a woman like Maud, up before dawn, feeding the fire. The fire, you'll remember, is the first rule. They never let the fire die. And one more door, a low one, half hidden, that I nearly walked past, the wood door. Because we have talked all night about the fire as if the fire feeds itself, and it does not. And the feeding of it is a labour so constant, so woven through her weeks, that she herself would forget to mention it, the way you would forget to mention breathing. A hearth like hers, burning from before dawn until the banking every day of the year, eats fuel the way the plough oxen eat hay by the mountain. And here is the catch that shapes whole afternoons of her life. She may not simply take it. The woods belong to the Lord, like the oven, like the mill, like the stream and the doves and the fish, and very nearly the wind. What she has is the ancient customary right with the ancient beautiful name, the right of Estovers, and in the mouths of the villagers it's called wood by hook or by crook, and it means exactly what it says. She may take from the Lord's wood whatever dead branches she can pull down with a hooked stick or a shepherd's crook, without axe, without saw, without climbing, what the tree is willing to give to a woman with a hook. No more. So picture the fuel afternoons, October, November, the light already failing at what you would call tea time. Maud and the children in the wood's edge with the long hook pole, and it is a skill like everything else, reading the canopy for the grey of dead wood among the living, hooking a branch high overhead, hauling with your whole hanging weight until it cracks and comes down in a rain of twigs and old birds' nests and beetles, and the children drag the branches into piles, and the piles are broken over the knee, over a stone, stamped, snapped, bundled into faggots bound with a twist of bramble stripped of its thorns by a mittened palm, mostly stripped and then carried, Everything, always, finally is carried. A faggot of wood the size of a rolled carpet on her back, held by a rope across the chest, children behind her like ducklings, each with their own small bundle. The whole family bent under fuel in the last copper light, breath steaming, robins following the disturbance. And this scene, this exact scene, a bent woman under a load of sticks against an evening sky, will be drawn and painted and photographed for centuries to come all over the world, because it is one of the oldest human silhouettes there is. At home the wood is stacked by size, and the sizes are a grammar she reads without thinking. Kindling twigs, quick sticks for boiling, thick slow limbs for the long burn, and the precious dense knots saved aside for the coldest nights. And beside the woodpile the peat and the dried dung cakes and the furs from the common, because a fire is fed like a family, a balanced diet, this for heat, and this for keeping, and this for the fast blaze under the washing water. She can glance at the stack in November and tell you whether it reaches March. Some years the glance says no, and then the fuel afternoons multiply, and the house burns cooler, and everyone wears more wool indoors and nobody discusses it, because it is not a crisis, it is just arithmetic. The same arithmetic as the grain and the bacon and the candles, the deep constant winter arithmetic of a world that must carry its own summer on its back into the dark. And since we're in the dark months anyway, take one storm with her before we go. Every winter sends at least one, the big one, the one the old men predict in their knees, and when it comes at night, always at night, a southwest gale that has crossed an ocean with nothing to slow it, arriving over the ridge like something with a grievance. You wake into it the way you woke this morning, ears first. The thatch is roaring, not rustling, roaring, a heavy seething rush like floodwater going over a weir, and beneath it the timbers of the house are working, the whole frame flexing and creaking joint by joint, the way a ship's hull talks in a sea, and the house is a ship tonight, a small wooden ship anchored in an open field with everything she loves battened inside it. The wind slams into the gable end in gusts you can feel through the ground itself, through the bed, a pressure on your chest, and each big gust is followed by a hail of small sounds, twigs and thatch straws torn loose and flung across the roof, and once, enormous, from somewhere out in the black, the long tearing crash of a tree going down, and the whole family is awake now, silent, listening, doing the parish's oldest sum. That was an elm. That was over towards the mill. That was not our tree. God keep whoever's tree it was. Walter gets up twice to lean his weight against the door and check the bar. There is nothing else to do, and he does it anyway, because that is what his hands are for. The animals are up at their end, uneasy, the cow shifting, the goats crying, and it is Cecily who goes to them, 10 years old now, walks down the dark house on her own, and stands at the hurdle talking to the cow the way she talked to her the night the calf came, a wobbling, steady little voice under the roar, and the beasts grow quiet around her the way they always do, because some hands and voices carry stillness in them, and the whole lane will know about Cecily's hands within a few years, and her mother, lying in the dark, listening to her daughter gentle a byre through a gale, knows it already. Toward dawn the wind goes round to the west and loses its temper by degrees, and the roaring drops to breathing, and the family sleeps its last hour in a heap, and in the morning the village comes out of its doors into the washed and glittering wreckage like people coming up from underground, and counts. A roof stripped at the far end, thatch strewn down the lane like a giant's hay. The elm indeed down by the mill, its root plate standing up taller than a man, a wall of torn earth. Hurdles gone, a shed folded, one ancient apple tree in the priest garth lying on its side in full possession of itself, roots in the air, and old Isolde standing over it saying it will fruit again lying down. They do, and being right, as usual. And by mid-morning the whole village is on the wounded roofs together, and the fallen elm has been claimed, apportioned and half-bucked into logs by common effort, stormwood being the one windfall, the word itself born from moments like this. That custom allows the taking of, and the disaster has been converted by the same web of hands that delivers the babies and hauls the second bucket, into fuel, timber, and a story for winter fires. And Mould walks home at noon with her apron full of scattered thatch straw for kindling, stepping around the puddles under a sky scrubbed so clean and blue it looks new made. And the fire, when she comes into it, is exactly where she left it. Banked, ticking, alive under its ash. First rule, 2 more small doors to open and then I'll take you down to sleep. One is a night in January, the other is a morning in June. Between them they hold everything I haven't said yet. The January night first, because a farm wife's resume is not complete until you've seen her at her other trade, the one with no name, the one every mother in this century holds alongside all the rest. Physician of last resort. It is deep winter, the bad cold, the kind where the water in the basin freezes an inch thick and the trees crack in the woods at night like distant boughs. And Johnny, who is 4 now, has a fever. It comes on at dusk, the way fevers like to. A boy who was loud at noon, gone quiet and glassy by supper, cheeks wrong, breath short and shallow with a small catch in it, that Mould hears across the whole length of the room, over the fire and the wind and 2 other children, because a mother's hearing is a specialised instrument and that catch is precisely what it is tuned for. And here is the whole of medieval medicine, as practised where medieval people actually lived, which is to say, not in the universities, not in the Latin texts about humours, but on a straw pallet by a peat fire 6 miles from the nearest man who calls himself a physician, and 100 years from the nearest thing that would help. It is this, firelight, and warm wool, and willow. She knows willow. Every wise woman on this island knows willow, has known it past remembering, the bitter bark of the wet-loving tree, steeped in hot water, given for fevers and aches, and it works, and none of them know why, and no one will know why for another 5.5 centuries, until chemists take the willow's bitterness apart and rebuild it and call it aspirin. She strips of it what she dried in autumn, because of course she dried some in autumn. The roof beam is a pharmacy, bundle after dusty bundle, willow and feverfew an elder, and she steeps the bark and holds the boy up against her chest and gets it into him, sip by sip, while he complains at the bitterness, which she is glad of, complaint being life. Then there is nothing else. That is the terror of it. And if you are a parent, you already know this room, because this room still exists. It has just acquired machines. There is nothing else to do, and so she does the nothing, hour by hour, all night, which is the oldest medical procedure of all. She keeps the fire strong. She sponges him with warm water when he burns and wraps him when he shakes. She holds him upright against her shoulder when the cough racks him, her hand moving on his back in slow circles, the same circles her mother's hand made, the same circles yours made or will make or received, circles older than the language she prays in. And she prays steadily, matter-of-factly to Mary who lost a son and would understand, the words worn smooth as the spoon handle. not because she's certain they are heard, but because they are the shape her fear can pour into instead of spilling on the child. Walter does not sleep either. He does the man's version, which in this marriage means he keeps the fire supplied without being asked, and looms, and at the worst hour, past the middle of the night, when the boy's breathing goes briefly to a whistle and both their hearts stop, it is Walter who breaks, who says into the dark, too loud, "Should I go for the priest?" And Mould says, "No," flatly, instantly, like a door slamming, because saying yes has a meaning and she refuses the meaning, and 30 seconds later the whistle eases, and neither of them ever mentions that exchange again as long as they live. By the grey of morning the fever cracks. It just cracks. The way they do, the boy suddenly sweating rivers, then sleeping properly, deep and slack. The catch gone out of his breath, and Maud sits there on the floor with her back against the bed frame, dead-armed, sand-eyed, 40 years old for one night at the age of 32, and watches him breathe as the smoke hole greys with day. And then, and this is the part I need you to sit with, then she gets up and cracks the ice on the water and rakes open the fire and starts the morning, the whole morning, the buckets, the milking, the pot. Because the cow does not know the boy was sick. The fire does not care. There is no one to call, no shift to swap. Whatever the night takes out of her, the morning is owed in full, and she pays it. That day, on no sleep, with her hands shaking slightly on the well rope, and Agnes at the well takes one look at her face and asks nothing and simply hauls Mauld's second bucket herself and walks her home. And that is medieval healthcare too, maybe the largest part of it. The network, the women's web, the eyes that notice and the hands that arrive. Johnny, for the record, is fine. Johnny will outlive everyone in this story and die an old man with grandchildren, on the far side of everything that's coming, still telling people his mother once cured him of a deadly fever with tree bark, which is, when you think about it, exactly what happened. Now the June morning, the other door, and this one I'm opening purely because you've earned something sweet. It is churning day, midsummer, 5 in the morning, and here is the thing nobody tells you about the crushing agricultural workload of a medieval June. At 5 on a clear midsummer morning, the workload is conducted in paradise. The sun has been up for ages and lies along the village in long gold bars. The air is cool as well water and completely still, and smells of hay and dog roses and wood smoke, and every bird in England is singing at once, the full dawn chorus, a wall of it, extravagant, deafening, free. Mould churns in the open doorway to catch the cool, because butter wants cool hands and a cool hour. The churn is the tall upright kind, a wooden cylinder with a plunger, and churning is forearm work, a steady patient thumping stroke, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. 1,000 strokes, 2,000, nobody counts. You don't churn by numbers, you churn by sound, because the cream talks to you through the plunger as it changes, thin and sloshing at first, then heavier, sulky, dragging at the stroke, and there's a stage in the middle where it seems to be refusing on purpose, and every dairy woman in history has spoken to her churn at this stage, wheedled it, insulted it, recited the little charm against the butter not coming, come butter come, and then, always suddenly, always a small miracle, the sound breaks, the slosh goes to a splash, the drag releases, and inside the churn the cream has flung itself apart into gold and buttermilk, and she lifts the lid on the smell of it, clean and rich and faintly grassy, June itself made solid, and begins working the butter in a bowl of cold well water with wooden pats, pressing the buttermilk out, folding, pressing, her wrists doing their 10,000th repetition of a motion she learned at her mother's elbow at the age of 6. Cecily sits on the step beside her, doing the same in miniature with a cup and a spoon, learning it the same way. The cat watches the buttermilk jug with criminal intent. Down the lane, a wood pigeon says the same 5 syllables over and over like a man who's forgotten why he came upstairs, and mould, pressing gold into shape in the early light, hands aching, back aching, day barely begun, everything still to do, catches herself, for no reason at all, humming. I could tell you that moment stands for something. I'd rather just leave you standing in it. That's the purse, then. The Tuesdays and the Sundays, the markets and the fevers, the famine behind and the shadow ahead, the brooch and the butter and the 2-fingered touch on the churchyard wall. Weigh it however you weigh things, but weigh it awake. 1 more minute, because I want to say the last daylight thing before we go down into the dark together. You live, whoever you are, wherever you're lying right now, phone on the pillow, machine hum in the walls, in the softest hour humanity has ever inhabited. Water arrives in your house by itself. Heat arrives by itself. Light waits on your wall for 1 finger. The whole apparatus of Mald's crushing morning, the fire, the buckets, the churn, the oven, the well, has been folded into switches, and the strength she built by necessity you now have to seek out on purpose in special buildings and pay for. And this is usually told as a joke at your expense, and I told it that way myself in the title. And it isn't really a joke, and it isn't really at your expense. It's just the trade. Every age trades. She had the weight and the meaning welded together so tightly she never had to go looking for either. You got the lightness and the looking. Neither of you chose. Nobody gets to choose their century. But you can borrow from each other across the wall. That's what these nights are for. She would borrow from you without 1 second's hesitation. The tap and the switch and the doctor and the certainty of bread. And you, tonight, are here to borrow the thing she'd never think to lend because she doesn't know she has it. The shape of her tiredness. Earned, bodily, attached at every point to people and animals and soil. The kind of tiredness that doesn't churn, doesn't scroll, doesn't lie awake auditing itself. The kind that lies down and is simply, immediately, claimed. So let's go be claimed. Back down the lane, back through the low door into the smoke smell and the dark. The fire is banked, the family is breathing. There's a place for you by the wall. Lie down now, both of you. The house at night is a held breath. You are lying in the dark of it, on straw that has learned your shape, under wool that holds a day's worth of your own warmth. And the darkness here is not the thin darkness of your century, thinned by street lights and standby lights, and the grey glow that never quite leaves a modern ceiling. This is the old dark, the whole dark. It has texture. It lies on your open eyes like cloth, and it is full of sounds, and every sound is accounted for. The fire banked under its ash, ticking, a slow, irregular, secret ticking, an ember settling deeper every few minutes, keeping its small red heart alive till morning. That sound has been the last sound in human ears for 100,000 years. Your body knows it from further back than your name. Let it tick, the wind in the thatch. Not a howl tonight, just a long, slow breathing over the roof, a hand smoothing and smoothing the straw, and now and then a tiny dry rustle deep inside it. A mouse, a sparrow shifting in its roost under the eaves, small lives packed into the roof itself, sleeping in the walls of your sleeping, layers of rest around your rest, the animals. Listen down the length of the house, the cow breathing like a slow tide, in and out, and in, enormous and unhurried, a sound with the patience of a hillside. The calf against her flank, quicker, lighter, a small boat beside a ship. The goats muttering once and going quiet, the hens on their beam, packed into one warm feathered loaf, making that low bird sound hens make in their sleep, softer than a word. The family. Walter beside you, gone down deep, breathing like work, even asleep. The children across the room, 1, 2, 3, and you count them. One last time without meaning to, the way you always do, the way you always will. And all 3 are there, and all 3 are breathing, and the count comes out right, and something in your chest that stood a guard all day sits down. Everything is counted, everything is in, the fire is banked, the door is barred, the bread is baked, and the water is drawn, and the beasts are fed, and the wash is dry and folded, and the boy's fever was a year ago, and the barn is full, and the day, this whole enormous day, is finished, actually finished, every stone of it carried and set down. There is nothing left to hold. So stop holding. Feel how it starts. It starts in the hands. Of course it starts in the hands. Everything today started in the hands. They are lying open now on the wool, and they are letting go of everything they gripped since before dawn. The rope, the yoke, the spoon, the beetle, the spade, the dough, the distaff, letting all of it go, finger by finger, the ache draining out of the knuckles, slow and warm like water finding a level, until your hands are just weight, just warm weight, empty and allowed to be empty. Let the arms follow. They carried the buckets, they held the child. They are done, heavy on the wool, sinking. The shoulders where the yoke rides. All day they were a bridge with a load on it. There is no load now. Feel the bridge stand down. Feel the shoulders drop away from your ears. Half an inch, another half inch, spread and flat, giving their weight to the straw, and the straw takes it. The straw can hold it. That's what it's for. The back. Oh, the back. It lifted everything today. It has earned the whole length of the bed. Let it lie down along every inch of itself, one slow vertebra at a time from the neck downward, like a rope being paid out, like a wet sheet unrolled on the grass to bleach, longer, looser, done. The legs that walk the lane and the field and the hill, 6 trips, 10 trips, who counts? Done walking, heavy as fence posts, sinking into the straw like posts into soft ground. The face, unclench the jaw you didn't know was clenched. Let the eyes rest shut, not squeezed, just resting, the way the hens rest, the way the calf rests. Let the forehead go smooth. There is no one to be capable for until morning, and morning will come. Of course it will come. The bells will ring in the dark, and the whole wheel will turn again, the ember, the buckets, the pot, the endless glorious weight of it. Tomorrow and after tomorrow and after. But that's tomorrow. That is entirely, completely tomorrow. Tonight there is only this, the tick of the fire, the tide of the cow's breathing, the count that came out right. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. That's more than most of the world in any century on any night. That's enough. Centuries will pass. The village will change beyond anything she could dream. The lanes she walks will be paved and lit and quiet. The great open fields will be hedged and squared. The well will be capped, and water will run uphill into every house like a tame miracle. The oven will belong to everyone. The dark will be pushed back to the edges of the map. Her house will fall and rot and melt back into the field it came from, and one day, 7 centuries on, a person with soft hands will find, in the turned earth of that field, a small green disc of corroded copper, the size of a fingernail, and hold it up to the light and wonder briefly whose it was. It was hers. Now you know, and the people of that far-off day will still do what she did. Not the buckets, not the churning, the other things. They will still get up in the dark for the people they love. They will still stand guard over small breathing. They will still count their children in the night without meaning to. They will still hold each other up through the worst hours and feed each other through the long ones, and lie down at the end of full days with aching hands, hoping they did enough, having done, almost always, more than enough. Some things don't change. The tired body doesn't change. The banked fire in the chest of every person who spent themselves on someone else today, that doesn't change. And the need, at the end of it, for rest, for this exact darkness, for permission to stop, that has never changed once. Not in 700 years, not in 7,000. So take the permission. She'd give it to you herself, and she would not be gentle about it. She'd tell you the same thing she tells the girls at the well, the same thing the whole long line of tired, capable women reaches out of the dark to tell you now. The day is done. You did it. Whatever you carried today, you carried it, and it's set down now, and it will keep till morning. Everything keeps till morning. Let it come then. Let sleep take you the way it took her, in the smoke-smelling dark, in the middle of her one wild, ordinary life, 697 years ago tonight. Let the fire tick. Let the wind smooth the thatch. Let the world fade. Let the sounds soften and blur and run together, the breathing and the embers and the wind into one low, warm sound, the sound of a house full of sleep. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You're warm. You're safe. The Count came out right. You've earned this rest. She'd be the first to say so. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.